The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich and Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Gentlemen and female gentlemen, we are gathered here today to discuss the bizarre state of the current cinema, and it's not great. Can we just be honest about that? Like the money's starting to roll in, and I'm very glad for that. But I don't know, man. I have just kind of like the last few weeks, we've talked movies, and I've had a good time. And there've been some good movies. I'm not saying they've been terrible, but I don't know, man. It just feels dead out there. I mean, I know we got Wolverine and Deadpool next week, and that's going to kickstart a few things. But for as much as a few of these movies have hit, man, has it just felt dead. It still feels dead out there. But as we try to break this down, and maybe I'm just being too myopic, Mark Radulich is here, which is weird for me to be too myopic. But Mark Radulich is here to help us. Mark, thank you as always.
Thanks, Robert. Pleasure to be back. I enjoy my weeks that I take off from Damn You Hollywood to have a good old-fashioned Jesse and Mark mess around. But I always 1 week is too long. I always miss Damn You Hollywood when we take off for a week or two. So I'm happy to be back. And I'm happy to be talking. Well, what are we talking about, Robert?
Well, before we do that, we also have with us Jason Teasley, who's back on the podcast for the first third of it.
Yay!
Jason, how are you?
I'm doing good. A little bit exhausted. This month's been hell on me. Been gone 3 weeks out of the month. This is actually one of my rare nights actually at home before I go to Cleveland for a week in the morning. So glad to join you guys. Yeah, glad to join you guys. And
so Jason,
talk.
Yes. I hit a 14 fight parlay over the weekend, and my strategy was pick astronomically favored fighters, like negative 3,000 odds, and oh look, they all won. So on a $40,
you probably won like $10.
Well, on a $40 bet, I made a total, including the $40 I put down, $120 payout.
Huh?
That's not bad.
That's a win.
Yeah, look, I'll take the win. So that's my new.
You got to take the wins when you got to get.
That's my new betting method: astronomically favored fighters, and pick 72 of them, and then get myself a nice payday.
The downside there being you only need one bit of randomness to strike, and you're screwed.
Yeah. Oh my god, a plus 4,500, and he won. I should have bet on that guy. All right, so we are in fact talking NEM. It's a twister. It's a twister. Twisters is a 2024 American disaster film directed by Lee Isaac Chung from a screenplay by Mark L. Smith, based on a story by stuff. You're gonna hurt Jason's feelings, who only wants positivity like a girl. Joseph Kosinski, serving as a standalone sequel to Twister, which I have to really interrupt myself and just say this. Jonas, who is a brilliant young man and destined for greatness, in the car ride home said one of the dumbest things. He was like, so the Helen Hunt character in this one, and I'm looking at him like, Helen Hunt's not in this movie because I showed him the original, which he loved, by the way.
What's not to love?
Yeah. I raved about it with Ronnie for an hour. If you want, like, just nonstop positivity, check out me and Ronnie doing an on trial for Twister.
One of the best 3-star movies you'll ever find.
Yeah. So we're in the car, and he's like, the Helen Hunt character. And I'm like, Helen Hunt's not in this movie. What the fuck are you talking about? He's like, no. The young girl, the lead girl, Helen Hunt. And I'm like, that's not Helen Hunt. That's nowhere near Helen. And she's like, I know, but but this is a prequel, and that's Helen Hunt as a young lady. And I'm like, none of those things are true.
You moron.
He looks at me doe-eyed and jaw agape going, I thought this was a continuation of the same story. And that's Helen Hunt's character. And then he was like, he backtracked on the whole prequel thing. And he was like, no, I just thought this was, like, it's now. That's Helen Hunt now. And I'm like, Helen Hunt now looks like the Crypt Keeper. Like,
a little bit.
I mean,
it's been 30 years. What did she de-age like Indiana Jones? What's wrong with you?
Benjamin Button disease, maybe. I don't know.
And your son, like all people just a little bit too smart for their own good, refused to just admit, got that one wrong. My bad.
Yeah, well, after the entire car ride of me berating him, I finally set him straight. Made him walk home. Like, think of what you did.
The sad thing is that's what it takes the first couple of times. I say this to someone on my other end of that.
Yeah.
It takes a couple of just, okay, your ego is way up here, and we need to just...
I punched his ego in the solar plexus, and I set him straight.
Good.
As you should. The film stars not Helen Hunt, Glen Powell, Anthony Ramos.
List the actress's real name, Mark.
Daisy Edgar-Jones.
There we go.
Brandon Perea, Maura Tierney, looking a little like Linda Hamilton these days, and Sasha Lane.
I can see it.
Its story follows a group of storm chasers who attempt to launch barrels of sodium polyacrylate solution into a tornado. Yes, they were trying to put its cylinder up the tornado's hole. Arr. With the goal of reducing its intensity.
One.
I got it in early. Twisters premiered at the Cineworld Leicester Square in London on July 8th, 2024, and was released internationally by Warner Brothers. Still a joint jam between Warner Brothers and Universal.
The countdown has begun to them separating back into Warner Brothers and Discovery, because that thing that is going to be... I never thought, Mark... Never thought in my life I'd see a merger worse than AOL Time Warner. Never thought I would.
Yep.
Then we got Discovery WB, and lo and behold.
Yeah. Too big for its britches. The film received generally positive reviews from critics and has grossed 124 million worldwide. Jason, what do you think of the original Twister?
I love the original Twister. It's one of Amber's favorite movies, so we watch it like at least 4 times a year because why not? And Amber can actually quote it. Like when we was driving home from a ball game the other night, that's how she kept me awake, by quoting movies. And I'm pretty sure I heard the cow quote from Twister at least 5 or 6 times from her, just to get me annoyed enough just to stay awake. But yeah, the original was, like Robert said, one of the better movies that critics didn't love, but an audience loved. And I think it was a disaster movie way ahead of its time.
Yeah, it's definitely way ahead of its time. I don't want to repeat everything I said on the on trial, and I want to throw it to Robert real quick, but I'll give you a quick word on what I said. Upon critical review, whether or not I think the harsh criticism coming from that part of the world came from their lack of enjoyment of it or their desire for more beefier film. If you look at just the craft elements, somewhere out there, Chris Bailey just shed a single tear. It's actually a very sound, structurally sound, near perfect film. There's just enough tornado. There's just enough tornado to warrant the name Twisters. There's a really solid relationship story that I didn't appreciate back in 1996 because I was in college at the time and had not lived a life. I've lived an entire life in the last 2 years, more than I would wish on anyone, and now relate to the Helen Hunt, Bill Paxton story more than I ever thought I would.
Whoa. You forgot to sign here.
Yeah.
Why are you reading it? Just sign it.
Why are you dragging
it's
your
the-
feet?
It's the same as it was in December. I didn't read it in December. Son of a.
Yeah,
She's a therapist. Oh, yours? You couldn't their bickering is so good. It's the most
swear to God,
authentic, estranged couple bickering you'll find.
it is. If Melissa and I were storm chasers, I swear to God, I've had those conversations, including cow. Cow, you're gonna hit a cow. Anyway, so yeah, it is structurally a very sound movie. It's darn near perfect. Like I said, the relationship stuff is really great. The oddball characters are very entertaining. Philip Seymour Hoffman seems like he did an 8-ball of coke before they shot all of his scenes. It's all really, really good. And I love the fact that it's actually based on a proof of concept and not an actual movie pitch. It was, look what we can do with our new computer generated graphics. They were like, all right, write me a movie around that. And it's nice that back in 1996, that assignment could be well done, because I don't think they could accomplish it. Then they were like, hey, we have this piece of technology. Great, write a movie around it, and it will stink on ice. Robert,
nowadays, what you get out of that prompt is Star Wars. And I mean modern Star Wars.
Yeah, modern Star Wars. Robert, what did you, beyond what you've already said, please don't repeat yourself, what did you think of the original Twister?
Saw it in the theater when I was a small boy living in Oregon at the time. It's great. It's a great disaster movie. That might be one of the movies that spawned my love for the genre, because disaster movies are a guilty pleasure of mine. Like, unless they're abjectly terrible, I will enjoy them.
Oh, me and you have to have a conversation then after the podcast about doing a triple feature involving Volcano.
The Tommy Lee Jones one?
Yeah.
I like that. That's
I
not
like
a good
that
movie.
movie.
Well, hang on. That is not a good movie. I enjoy it. And I
Yeah.
hate myself for enjoying it, but I do.
It's a guilty pleasure.
It totally is.
Yeah, we can do that. Dante's Peak, and
Yeah.
we'll find another Volcano movie that we can
Yes, we will.
throw in there. But so I think
Joe
this is one
versus
of the movies.
volcano.
Please stop. Now I'm saying please stop.
But there's a handful of things about if you rewatch the original Twister, there's a few things, like you mentioned, it's structurally incredibly sound. The CGI is noticeable, but they use it sparingly enough that the only times it really stands out are like, there's a segment near the end where a bunch of trees are uprooted and thrown around, and they didn't have the leaf technology quite down yet, and it's not very hard to see, like, okay, that's not a real tree.
You really have to be looking for it, though, to see it.
Yeah, the great thing about that movie is they do it quick enough that, like, if you're looking for it, especially with modern eyes, like, but it's cut with real stuff enough that you're willing to go along for the ride.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's just purely practically done. Like the miniature shot where they drag a oil tanker along a highway, or them driving through a house, like actual thing that happens. That's all really good. This is going to bleed into one of my criticisms of this movie, but as a minor aside, let me throw this out there because it relates to the original movie and then to this one. If you put the two casts side by side for the original and for this one, you'll notice something very important. It's a very important difference between those two casts. No one nowadays is allowed to look older than 34. And hang on, I bring this up also because this got floated on Twitter when this movie came out. Somebody had rewatched it, and one of the early scenes in Twister is Bill Paxton and Philip Seymour Hoffman together on screen, the two of them on screen. And it's sad because they're both no longer with us. And somebody mentioned, I put this movie on, and very shortly I start crying because these two are on here, and there was a response to that rung true for me, and it rings even truer having now seen Twisters. They don't let people who look like that head blockbusters anymore.
Ronnie and I talk. I know you watched the On Trial, but for those of you that didn't, Ronnie and I did spend a minute on what an odd thing Twister was, because Helen Hunt was a star of television, and she was at the height of her television powers, but she wasn't necessarily a mainstream feature starlet. And Bill Paxton was in a zillion movies, starred in none of them. Like, he not as a leading man.
No.
And so when you're looking to cast your disaster movie and they land on the girl from Mad About You and Chet from Weird Science, like, what a weird combination, but it totally works because the star of that movie is not the two of them, it's the Van Twister. But to your point, they wouldn't even do that now. They wouldn't grab a middle-aged star of television now. Like, you know, I don't know if she's even too old for this conversation, but like Jennifer Aniston. You wouldn't have Jennifer Aniston in your disaster movie and, you know, just to keep it on Friends, Ross, right? There's no way they'd let that happen. To your point, they have to go for somebody who looks like they're 18.
What we get is Glen Powell, and
I have things to say about Glen Powell, all positive. But we'll get there when we get there. All right.
Again, like we get the. I'm convinced there's a van that wanders around downtown LA and just nets a group of like 5 to 6 people, reels them into the back of the van, and drags them off to the set.
It's just, you look pretty, get in my van. Oh, you're gonna do things to me. I certainly am. And then they put them in a movie. You're like, this is terrible. I don't want to do this.
But it's just, and this has been complained about for a long time now, but this movie, again, kind of put it into stark relief, especially comparing and contrasting the two. Everyone in Twister looks like they've lived a life.
Yeah.
Like, those are people who have life written all over. This came up, another example, because we're going to talk about this movie too fairly shortly. Put the cast of the original Alien next to the
I knew that's where you were going with this.
Put them next to the cast from Alien Romulus.
Yeah. Everybody in Alien looks like they literally, you know, to kind of go up, riff off what you were saying, they went into a truck stop.
Yeah.
And just grabbed random, you know, truckers and passerbys and threw them in the van, as opposed to this group that they clearly got from a very young casting call. All right, Robert.
Again, now everything has to look like like LA in 2023. Like that's what the thought process is, and it ain't great. But
all right, let's get into the plot of this thing. Yes.
So we open following our protagonist, who I have a writing complaint about her, but I'll save it. She is trying to kill a tornado. She has a theory that if I throw a bunch of hyper-absorbent material up into the funnel of a tornado, it will suck the moisture out of the air, supercool it, and stop the necessary flow of warm, moist air to cool, dry air that helps kind of facilitate the existence of a tornado. And she's trying to get this to work, and she's one of these people who would be the key to everything in a slightly different story, because she's the storm speaker, storm whisperer. Like she speaks to the weather patterns. And so she and her team go out, they go to deploy this thing, they do, and they're like, yay, this is all working great, right? And then it turns out that the tornado they wound up doing this for, they wanted to do this on a small tornado. The old, EF1. They're still destructive, but you can survive. A human being can survive getting sucked up into one of those things. In fact, it's not uncommon. What instead they got was coked out Brock Lesnar's version of the F5.
Yeah, I was just waiting for Mark to throw up Brock Lesnar on the screen.
All right, well, if you listen closely, you could hear the Twister yell, "Welcome to Suplex City, bitch," as it yoinks one of the girls into the air.
I'm fairly certain. And the storm is much more powerful than they anticipated, is the upthrust of that. And their plan wouldn't work on something of that size. So now they're screwed. Trying to drive away from a tornado. They can't do it. 3 of the 4 who are in the car die, leaving only our protagonist and the person they left back with the computer data and the trailing vehicle. And she's traumatized and walks out from under an overpass, which they at least bring up is like not a great place to be in a tornado. But if it's open field or underpass, you do what you can to try and make something work. We then flash forward 5 years. And our protagonist now lives in New York City. Because reasons.
Because there's rarely a
Because she
tornado.
like
Because there's rarely a tornado in New
tornadoes.
York City, and that's where the job was. It's not that complicated.
And there's rarely tornadoes in a lot of places. We go to New York because
That's where the job is. Move this
we
on.
lionize that location for no good reason.
You are picking at something for no good reason. Moving on.
It only annoys you and other people from New York, just for the record.
Okay.
She's there. She's doing the stuff for the National Weather Institute, the National Weather Service, rather. And it's a ho-hum existence, but, you know, she's not living in a crappy apartment because we can't put an attractive person in a crappy apartment, even in New York these days. She's approached by her old buddy, Javi, and he's like, hey, so I've shrunk this technology. The military had this great radar, and I want to make it smaller, and I want to point it at tornadoes and get better readings than we've ever had before. And I just kind of need your help, and I've got all this financial backing, and come out and chase tornadoes again. And she's like, no, I'm too old for this, and I'm traumatized, and I don't want to come back for one last ride of the, that's where bad things happen. I'm only 4 days from retirement, and insert every other cliche you can think of here. I have writing complaints about this movie, in case you couldn't tell. Ultimately, of course, she goes on the one last hurrah because there was no movie otherwise. So they all head out, and there's a big storm systems working their way through Oklahoma, as always. Not even facetious, as always. And while they're trying to get set up, we are introduced to Glen Powell, who is a YouTube douchebag live streamer who chases tornadoes while live streaming and selling his merchandise, and actually opens one of his scenes of dialogue with "Hello, chat." And I can't tell you how much I hate that. I really can't.
It was a bit too meta for me too.
But they chase the tornado, and our protagonist loses her nerve because she's too traumatized. And Glen Powell drives into the middle of the tornado and shoots fireworks up into it because that's what they were doing on this video. Can we shoot fireworks into a tornado? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes, you
So,
can.
hang on. Let me fix that sentence for you. So Glen Powell and his cohorts drive into a tornado and shoot fireworks up it because it's awesome. Move on.
Not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying. This experiment, which is of dubious scientific value, but I'm sure garnered enough clicks on YouTube.
Look, you're watching that video and like, well, they either die or we get to see fireworks up or tornado. Win-win.
If you like snuff films, okay, fair enough. It's the internet, you can find them. There winds up being some friction between the group that is helmed by our protagonist and her buddy Javi, and the rough and tumble guys out of Arkansas, who the tornado wrangler. And so friction because one of them is the ragtag plucky bunch of underdogs, and the other is the well-financed, sleeker presentation backed by dubious money men, because there's always dubious money men. In this case, it's real estate investors, because if Scooby-Doo taught us anything, it's always the real estate investors.
And they would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't those meddling tornado wranglers.
Yes, he would. So we rinse and repeat this a few times with, tornadoes showing up and bits of interpersonal drama. And eventually there's a tornado that hits a rodeo that Glen Powell and our protagonist are at together. And she winds up they get into a fight, her and Javi, and she drives off back home because her home is a small farm, not too far from where they are. And she goes and cries in her old bedroom. And then Glen Powell shows up because he tracked her down. And we get a little bit more of her backstory. They do some bonding. They try to figure out if her plan will ever work. So they drive out and they test it on a small tornado, and it doesn't work. But all their scientific modeling said it should have worked. And as we all know, the science can never be wrong, Mark. The math. So they basically emotionally blackmail Javi into giving them more data from the data from the partially successful deployment of the radar system that he has.
Yes, what we learn here is that if you're ever struggling with your scientific experiment, use your good looks and body to emotionally manipulate the guy who has the hots for you into giving away his job. It works every time.
It works a disturbing amount of the time.
He owns the company, so it's not really giving away his job.
Girls, grow up to trick men that have the hots for you into doing things they don't want to do. That's the way to go.
Manipulation works every time.
60% of the time, it works 100% of the time, right? So they remodel and realize, oh, there's not enough moisture in the tornado for this thing to work properly. We're just pulling moisture out of the air, but it's not really affecting the temperature change and the disruption in airflow that we need to actually accomplish this. So what do we need? We need more water in these tornadoes. Famously dry climate phenomena, right? And isn't it just happy-go-lucky day that nearby there was cloud seeding going on? So they acquire a bunch of cloud seeding bits, load those into rockets, mix up some more of this desiccant material, and they decide, okay, we're going to try this again. So the whole crew gets up and they go chasing a tornado. Bad things happen to Javi and the other team, but they all escape. Nobody dies. The tornado takes out part of some kind of power plant refinery thing, so we get the flaming tornado for a couple of seconds.
I assumed it was an oil refinery.
My assumption as well, but it is never made manifestly clear.
Yeah. But they set a tornado on fire. That's the important thing here.
It really is. Then the tornado heads towards a small town nearby, so our group of chuckleheads drive out to try and help those people. The line is actually said, the tornado's heading that way. We can't stop it, but we can help. Well, fast forward about 4 minutes of weird disaster porn, and our protagonist jumps into the truck, drives the trailer with all the desiccant material in front of this giant tornado, and stops it, making everyone look very stupid.
Plays chicken with the tornado.
I have so much to say about that.
Does in fact disrupt the tornado, saving the movie theater and the people, Mark. She saved the people.
Yes.
And we end on the hopeful note that she and Glen Powell will get together off screen because they don't even share a kiss in this movie.
Yeah, not since Pacific Rim had they've done a will they, won't they, and they don't.
Well, I want to compare and contrast that briefly when we get to it, so remind me to circle back to that.
Yeah.
That's where we end, and I'm sure they're going to try and do twisters, but spell one of the E's with a 3 after this.
It's going to be nipple twisters.
Twisters with 3 S's. All right, Jason.
You can't do it with only 2 S's. We know that.
All right, Jason, go ahead and give the uncritically positive review of this movie. Hit it.
I mean, I really liked it. It wasn't bad. It was. You had a few nods to the original. As you see Dorothy in the opening scenes, you see Dorothy, which I still am wondering how they acquired Dorothy. And they set you up with a complete fake out when she gets a call from her mom and everything. So they kind of lead you on to believe, with them setting up Dorothy. She gets a call from the mom. She's, blonde hair, everything that, you're going to get a surprise Helen Hunt cameo. No, we get a woman that genetically cannot be her mother because that's not how genes work. Go figure.
And never nary a father figure around as well, mind you.
Yeah. I would have been perfectly okay with, kind of alluded that this was Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton's daughter. And they just tied it up in a nice little bow. That's how they had Dorothy. Got it, and just left it at that. I like the fact that, you did have a little bit of chemistry between your two leads. Nothing like you would hope, but there was enough chemistry to keep it interesting enough to keep you engaged in the will they, won't they. The effects were good, but for what we have in 2024, I expected to be wowed a little bit more.
Yeah.
Especially with something that, with the disaster movie that we've seen a million times, a million disaster movies. I thought that maybe they could have did a little bit more with the fire tornado, even the twin tornadoes.
Yep.
If you would have had the twin tornado thing.
When nothing in your 2024 disaster movie sends a chill down the audience's spine the same way the first view of the F5 in the original does from 30 years ago, you have failed on some fundamental level.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you don't really see and you don't really feel that anybody's in like extreme peril. That's one of my gripes for this. You don't think that once you have the first few deaths in the opening, the cold open, you don't feel like anybody's going to die in the rest of the movie. There's no sense of, we could lose this person. There's a possibility people could die. Even with the randos dying, it doesn't really inflict an emotional response. But that being said, I think they could have fleshed this out a little bit more and cut back some places and expanded others. Like I said, the fire tornado, you didn't really need to go into the whole thing about the whole YouTube channel and stuff. You could have just made him you could have done the YouTube thing. You could have expanded on the fact that, you get the throwaway line of when they do see this wreckage, one of the girl that has the drone walks up to her and says, here, is trying to give her food. She's like, no, I don't want to buy your merch. She's like, no, that's why we sell the merch. You could have maybe expounded on that so you don't, that little section of, they come off as these complete douchebags online, but the reason you could have fleshed out the fact that they are actually going into the communities to help them after tornadoes and showing the relief efforts rather than just having that throwaway line and then finding a dog. That was basically your humanitarian 5 minutes of humanitarian work to try to get you to win you over to be on the side of the Wranglers, which did not elicit any kind of emotional response whatsoever, at least for me.
It's too blatant in its attempt at manipulation.
Yeah.
You seen the twist of Javi working for an evil land developer. You've seen that from a mile away because he has all this technology, but yet he was in the military. Yeah, he had all this technology and stuff when he was, with her. Then all of a sudden he says he goes to the military. Oh, then I come out and start my own business and we have all this high tech stuff. And we work with investors. What does investors code work for? Evil enterprise. And you're like, okay.
Nothing is worse. Nothing is worse than venture capitalists. Nothing is worse.
Yeah, you're
than
like
these writers.
And you're like, okay, you see them swooping in, taking advantage of people. You know that there's and that whole conflict between her and Javi because he's working for an evil land developer, which is twirling mustachey. That whole conflict was not even emotional response. It was like, oh, you're doing this because you're evil.
There's a lot of projection. There's a lot of projection in the script from the people that wrote it that they think this sort of thing is bad. And they're looking at the audience going, well, it's bad too, right? And maybe some people in the audience was like, yeah, absolutely. Capitalism sucks. And the rest of the adults in the audience are going, the fuck did you expect to happen here?
Yeah, it's like you lost your entire, are you taking advantage of a situation? Yes. But,
hang on. The only way that's effective is if the landowner is the one causing the tornadoes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Well, you know,
Or-
he might have a weather machine hidden out back, Mark.
I noticed
The
in
weather wizard.
the inside lining of his suit jacket, it actually had the Cobra insignia.
Him and Destro.
The other way to go about it is to make his the methods by which he makes offers and whatnot be like gross.
Yeah.
Like if he's grossly undervaluing everything,
Yeah.
and like, but at that point you're telling a land developer story, not a disaster movie, and you've lost the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just twisters. Like,
So
you know, you kind of
Again,
it kind of models it as like you're going to have this big combination of two tornadoes combining for this extravagant, perfect, quote unquote, perfect storm natural disaster. You have twin tornadoes that go nowhere, and I had a problem with that. But like, as just a turn, if you don't think about the movie, you can enjoy it. Which my wife will enjoy it because she will see swirly things on the screen. She will be happy. We can move on with the day.
Yep. My grossly uncritical 13-year-old daughter thought it was great and really was frustrated with me and her brother for any criticism that we had of them. It's almost like they're a member of my podcast people. So yeah, I get it. There's people who don't think critically about these things and are just kind of going for the laser light show. Probably have a good time with this movie.
And if you would have seen the land developer coming in and being like, "Look, we're only going to give you like 25 cents on the dollar for your land,"
That's what
and
Robert
you show
was saying.
that,
Yeah.
and you show that, or you didn't even have to show that. You would just have people coming in, like have them coming in trying to do the relief work, and having the land developer already been there, and have them just trying to help people, and them being, I've spent my whole life here, and I just had my whole life be basically I have to rebuild with something. I have nothing. Because you have insurance. Insurance isn't great.
I think the way to have done it, if we're going to beat this particular point to death, the way to have done it without losing the plot is I'm going to give you a fair market for your now destroyed property. I don't have to give you this much, but I'm going to out of the goodness of my heart because I understand. And so that you can take your family and leave. And they're like, no, I want to rebuild. I'm happy to take the money, but I'm going to rebuild in the same spot or something along those lines. Like I'm willing, or, people not willing to take the money and, because it's like, oh, I'll file an insurance claim. It'll be fine. We'll figure this out, but I don't want to leave this area. And he's forcing them out. Like when the money doesn't work, he's doing other things. Okay, fine. Then he's slimy. But
what you really need to sell this is you need the insurance guy too.
Yeah.
They're
in cahoots.
Yeah. You need the land developer to be in cahoots with a skeevy insurance adjuster. That's what you need to make that. Because as it stands, oh no, this guy's coming through, and is he being slightly opportunistic? Yes, but we have no evidence that he's being exploitative, and those are two very different things.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of projection from the nits who wrote this movie on what their agenda is, and I have a lot of complaints in that way, in the sense that you can tell young people wrote this script because it's all fucking over a lot of the relationships and dialogue. And so anything else, Jason? Because if I don't stop now, you're not going to get another chance to talk, because I got a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go ahead and throw one of my big negatives out there. I think they focus too much on the relationship aspect over the
what relationship
storms. Well, I mean, no, they was trying to force they was trying to force a relationship rather than like show it like basically be organically happening.
Okay, they were like forcing something that wasn't really coming together.
They was trying to beat you over the head with it. Like, see here, they need to be here. Oh, Gesundheit.
Sorry.
They was basically forcing this, and then you had like the whole hobby thing, like the third wheel, that like if you just would have seen him getting jealous or something. No, he was basically.
I'm going to make a statement to go along with that, and I'll explain it later. Daisy Edgar-Jones feels like the hinge in an asexual throuple between, or a triad between Javi and Glen Powell. There was a point where I looked at my kids and I was like, I feel bad for you guys living in this world right now.
Because, like, Javi is just, like, pining over her, getting nothing.
Yeah.
Except guilt for
that
what
tracks.
happened in the past.
That tracks. I didn't have a problem with that.
No, I'm saying he was just pining over her, and the only thing it is the guilt, and she's holding the guilt over. She's manipulating him due to the guilt from 5 years ago, and it's like, and he's trying to give her an opportunity to get past everything, and she just totally manipulates him and discards him to get his information, so she can further her career and go be with Glen Powell.
Yeah. All right. So a couple of things. As much as I don't want to repeat some of what you said, I kind of have to, but I'm going to expound on it. They showed you the fire tornado in the trailer, and the implication is that this fire tornado was going to play a big deal in the third act, and that you were going to get a lot more of it. And you don't. What you see in the trailer is all there is in the movie, and the actual explosion of the refinery looks really, really cool, but it was also in the trailer, and they don't do anything with it. So everything that was cool about that sequence, you saw in the trailer already, and then it ceases to have an impact on the plot. And what a missed opportunity. Folks, if you're going to set a tornado or a hurricane or something or some other weather phenomena on fire, you better use it. That I joked with Jonas, that tornado should have grown arms with muscles and shaking it at the people and going, I'm gonna destroy the town. Like it needed to be
Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. The tornado should have been, you should have heard the Warrior music in the background and the tornado comes running at the town. I'm being somewhat facetious, but like you think about the twin tornadoes was so non-impactful for me in the movie. I forgot it was there. And like you said it, and I was like, "Oh, that's right." The guy in the trailer yells "twins," and then but it might as well have been watching fish at an aquarium. That's what it comes across like for me. Like they do nothing with this. So my big problem with this movie, because for the first 2/3 of it, I was fine with it. The beginning tragic incident that sets the whole thing off. That was impactful, watching people get sucked up into this tornado. If you're that girl and you design this experiment and it goes so badly it kills 3 of your friends, yeah, I get that. That would definitely cause PTSD, and I was with her, having survived that harrowing incident, deciding I'm going to go to the big city and use my meteorological skills that way, and I don't want any part of this anymore. Yep, I'm good with this so far. Javi going, hey. All of this has been about what we can do to stop tornadoes, and I have a way for at least getting there. We're going to put these 3 radars, these lasers, point them at a tornado, and we'll have more of an understanding of what a tornado is better than we ever have before, and that gets us to the next step of trying to disrupt them, which was what you were doing in the first place. All right, so far this is all pretty solid screenwriting. We get there, we meet the rebels. We've got the Empire, we've got the Rebels, and they're in competition with each other.
If I have another gripe about this, it's the fact that none of our rednecks had the Confederate flag anywhere. Somebody's flying that thing at some point if those are those people. I'm just saying.
Let me get there. So,
I say that without heat, just as an observation.
No, I know why. I get it. But it kind of goes back to like, sometimes feeling like, she's a hinge in an asexual triad. There's a lot about this movie with a lot of modern consideration, and it was hard for me to watch at times. It was like, ugh, this is so like sanitized and saccharine almost. But anyway, let me finish what I was saying. So her and Glen Powell, despite what I just said, have actually really good sexual chemistry together. And here's where the most positive thing I can say about this movie, probably the one like shining light in this whole affair. I wish Glen Powell was around 20 years ago. He would have been a legit, bankable, Tom Cruise level movie star.
Tom Cruise level's a bit much, but
we don't make stars like that anymore.
Val
So
Kilmer.
yeah, okay, George Clooney.
Yeah.
The guy 20 years ago, 30 years ago would have been one of the 5 male kings of Hollywood. And he happens to be in a time where they don't make Hollywood stars anymore. The guy has gorgeous, chiseled, good looks. He is like a perfect looking man. He carries himself with all the grace and authority that a man should. I mean, and as an actor, everything he's in, he's great in. You know, Chris Owens from Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do. Talked about him in Hitman. He was like that. He won him over in Hitman. The modern thing of, I think it's The Taming of the Shrew. Anyone But You. Apparently, like, he sells that movie clean. Like, he's the best part of it. He was awesome in Top Gun Maverick, though everything about that movie was awesome. So yeah. Glen Powell.
I have soured on that movie upon further reflections, for the record.
Noted. Noted. Let the court reflect that Robert is soured on Top Gun Maverick. You're the only male in existence that said those words. So
I'll die on that hill.
So anyway, Glen Powell is great in this. And that's what makes what happens to him just so sad. The girl is not shrill. She's not a shrew. She's not insufferable. She's not Joey King from A Family Affair. Check out my review with Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do for more on that. She's fine in this. I think she's doing all the things she's supposed to be doing. I think she's interesting. And I think when we follow her home and she's just like, I did an experiment. It got my friends killed. This doesn't work. And I don't know why. Look, as somebody who goes Donald out the window on a lot of his tech, I was having a situation when I came home from my girlfriend's where I couldn't get my Roku thing to work because I didn't have it plugged in. Like, we've all been there. We're like, why doesn't this work? And it's like, yeah, you missed a simple step here. I think Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, there was a whole, not The Big Bang Theory, from Young Sheldon, they did a sequence where he's, doing his college work and he's getting it wrong every single time, and the professor won't tell him why, and he doesn't know what he's missing. And that's the lesson here is, go through things step by step to figure out what you've missed and fix it. That'll work for me. So it's the last third of the movie because, like, up to this point, highly recommended. I was with it. I was enjoying it. My kids were enjoying it. We were all having a great time. I would have come into this review with very little things to complain about. And then we get to the third act. And we talked about her emotional manipulation of Javi, and I'm not holding that against the actress. I'm not even holding it against the writers. Like, if that's what you want to do, people do these things. Again, a woman using her relationship with another guy to get what she wants out of him. Must be a day that ends in Y. So I'm not holding the script. I'm not going to hold the movie at fault for that. Where I lost my patience, though, was, and I was explaining this to everyone at dinner tonight. So we have 3 trucks, each have a radar in it. They're driving to 3 points around this tornado. They're going to stop at just the right distance, get out, pull these things out, put them on the ground, impact them into the ground so that they don't move, drive away. Lobster. They do this with 2 of them, no problem. And I think they successfully do it a second time with all 3. And each time they do this isn't how, as a point of comparison, because this got brought up when I brought it up with my people in the house. When they're trying to get Dorothy off the truck in Twister, there's wraps, there's belts, things are getting stuck. This is a problem. They can't get this thing off the truck fast enough. And they show you that in the movie. It is a giant struggle for Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton every single time they do it.
Until they don't. Until they get it right.
Until they get it right. Yeah. Here, they get it right every time they do it, and it only takes a few seconds. Which leads us to fire tornado disperses the fire. Now it's just a good old-fashioned regular tornado. And it's coming at the town like a train.
I know where you're going.
Like a train, right? And they go, okay, well, there's nothing we can do about this big fuck-all tornado. Run to the town and tell everybody, get the fuck out of there. Okay, go. The girl is going. The rebels are going. Everyone's going. And Javi's like, I want her to... He doesn't say this, but it's way implied. I want the pretty girl to like me again. She's mad at me. I have to make up for it. I have to go to the town to save the people. She has convinced me that the people matter more than the money. Even though that's dumb. But the way they do it in the movie, they handle it stupidly. But whatever, that's where we are with this movie. He has come to the conclusion people matter more than money, and therefore he must go save the people, inspired by this girl. And the guy in the truck, the only villain in this movie, this poor man, is like, get the radar out first. We can get the radar out first, get that done, and then go save the fuck whatever you want to do. But let's get the radar out. That's why we're here. And he's like, no, you don't understand. The pretty girl said we must save the people, and that is what I must do. And he's like, and I wanted him to be like, you can have both. You can have both things.
Literally nothing stopping him from doing both.
You don't
Not a
have
darn
to
thing.
make a choice. No choice has to be made here. You can do the pretty thing for the pretty girl and do the thing for the money.
Hold on. I'm going to bring something up. They have to be in proximity of the other two. They have to be within 300
They
yards.
were. He was like, get out and do it now. And Javi kept driving is what happened.
When
No,
he stops,
he says he has to go back and meet the team.
No. He says stop, go over here, and we'll plant the radar. Literally the line. We make a right hand here, we plant the radar, and we're good.
Yeah.
And Javi stops the car. He gets out to start unpacking the radar, and then Javi drives off for no good reason.
I mean,
It's unbearably stupid.
I mean, he doesn't even have it to where it's unlocked, and as Javi's driving away, it slides off the truck, or anything like that. Like, I'm not helping, which I could have lived with if he was like, fine, fuck off, grab the radar and go. And so he gets out of the car, unlatches the thing, and as he's got his hands on it, Javi drives off and it like lands on his foot or something. Fine, whatever. I could have dealt with all of that, but Javi's like, no, you don't understand. I can only do one thing. I can either save Robin or Vicky Vale. Like, oh my god, is that what we're doing here?
Well, first of all, that wasn't Vicky Vale in that Sophie's Choice that they set up in Batman Forever, but
you get the point.
Much harder to choose between Nicole Kidman than
fair.
For the record,
I have to save either Robin or Hot Blonde, and even Batman saves them both. Yeah,
well,
so
Batman.
That was dumb and it was forced, and and so that whole
Such
thing is
bad,
way forced
such
and
bad
way stupid.
Pseudo drama, terrible.
That was really, really subpar writing, and the fact that they got that far into the movie and they couldn't stick the landing was really sad, but not as sad as what happens next. So all of our heroes are in the town. Everything is going tits up. And
we knock over the water tower and it falls conveniently 3 inches in front of our hero.
It's fine. I'm fine with all of this. Nothing. Again, the last time they tried the experiment, it didn't work. They didn't get a chance to do this one because of what happened at the refinery, yada, yada, yada. So, they were driving into the tornado to disrupt it, to use the barrels with the water and the seed and all of that, and the rockets. And they couldn't because they were being chased by a fire tornado. And then the fire tornado went away. And by that point, they were like, the mission must be to save the children. Fine, whatever. They're there. Now, nothing else happens to convince her otherwise. Nothing else is going on in this movie. I thought maybe with the water tower there, now she has enough water, blah, blah, yakety schmack. No, the water tower falling was just a thing to put Glen Powell. 87 Glenn just came to my head. I almost went Glenn Jacobs. In peril.
Wrong state. He would have been in Tennessee.
So we're in the theater, and our two manly men, our two male heroes of this picture are saving the people. They're doing what men do. And the girl goes, now would be a good time for me to try my experiment. And just fucks off and leaves.
Hang on. In moderate fairness to Glen Powell not accompanying her, his leg is messed up.
That was not made clear in the movie.
No, you have to be me to pay attention to stuff like that. But in fairness,
he's walking around. I mean,
he's limping. He's not doing a good job of it. But,
yeah, he's selling.
It's Shawn Michaels selling, but
this is Young Bucks selling. It's not Shawn Michaels. Sure, but in theory, his leg is a little messed up. So
nothing could have stopped him from driving the truck. But my point is,
run from there to the truck is what stopped him. Like that's the thing he couldn't do. Okay,
here's the thing though. She's like, I'm leaving. I'm going to drive it to the, and it's not I can't go with you. I'm crippled. It's no, don't go, pretty girl. Stay and be safe with the big men. And she's like, no, I must kill a tornado.
No, she sneaks off.
Yeah, whatever. So she gets in the truck and she drives into the tornado and she saves the day. And there's a moment there where she may have died, but she lives because she's plot armor.
It's not. There's no moment in that when you think she might die.
I mean, they flipped the truck is my point.
Okay. Yes, the truck is wrecked. That's not the same thing as did she survive?
Yeah,
It has an external roll cage on the outside of it.
So anyway, my point being that throughout the course, and this is important. So listen up, children, because this is film theory here. This is film craft. I'm going to teach you. They have spent the majority of this movie slowly but surely stitching together a relationship between pretty girl and hunky man. And at the point of where we start the third act, pretty girl and hunky man have formed a good, solid team. They figured out what went wrong with the tornado killing. They got the experiment all ready to go. They have the materials. They have the tools. They have the talent. They are a team, and they love each other, and they are ready to take on this tornado. And when there's an opportunity there for the two of them to do it together, as they've been seeding the entire movie, they go, well, it's 2024 and girls get it done. So she rides off into the sunset all by herself, leaving both male heroes in this movie standing there holding their dicks, literally just holding their dicks. They're just in the theater watching her go. And Glen Powell looks like he would rather be in any other movie than the one he's in at that time. It's like he didn't know that scene was in the movie when he read the script, and they just handed him those pages that day. And they were like, so my motivation is I'm a pussy? Yes. And now he's sad. Great. Shoot that. And I think by that point, Javier was so over being in this movie and being abused that he didn't care anymore. But, oh my God, that annoyed the piss out of me. When I saw her get in the truck and drive into the tornado to save the day by her lonesome, instead of with Glen Powell, as it should have been done, I looked at my kids and made the crusty face. And Jonas knew exactly what I was doing, and Lily was like, I don't understand. And of course she doesn't. And that is my biggest problem with this. This is writing to a very young, very modern audience. That doesn't really exist. That isn't going to see this movie. The people, and so on the one hand, Axel F. Okay, not even Top Gun Maverick, because that was a zillion years ago. Axel F. wrote to the audience that's going to watch that movie. Me, Neil, Chris, 40-year-olds, okay, who grew up with Beverly Hills Cop and loved the first two movies. Let's not talk about the third one ever again. And they wrote to that audience, and they kept everything that was modern on it at just the right pitch so that you don't turn away the old fuckers like me. And that's why that movie was perfect. This one does the opposite. This one forgets that the only people that are going to see Twisters are old fuckers like us, and if we bring our children. Period. The end. The young 20-somethings don't watch movies anymore. They're not going to see this. They have no relationship to the original. The original they think is stupid. Everyone does who didn't see it. That's kind of its like reputation. Oh, Twisters is the goofy tornado movie with the chick from Mad About You. Until you actually sit down and watch the thing and you realize how great it is. So they wrote it to a very like young, niche, modern audience that doesn't actually watch these kinds of movies, or this one in particular. And it sucks because of it. The third act killed this movie for me. Like 2/3 of the way through, we were good, and I was ready to take it home. And then that last third ruined the whole thing, Robert.
So a few things about this. I'm with you in that generally the first 2/3 are fine. You can, like you said, you can tell there's a lot of very young sensibilities here. At the same time, I have to give this movie credit for a couple of things. If this were just a thoroughly modern movie, it would make fun of everyone involved in this.
Yeah.
It doesn't. The entire phenomena of storm chasing is a deeply American thing. This is a thing Americans do, because most tornadoes that touch down on the globe in a area that's inhabited happen in this relatively narrow space of land, again, speaking on a planetary scale, in the United States. There's tornadoes in Canada. There's tornadoes in South. Like, these are not, the United States does not have a monopoly on the weather phenomena. Okay, we don't. But we do have a lot of them. And because we're crazy, we kind of go, you know what? What if I outfit my truck, drive into that thing, stick stakes in the ground so I don't get tipped over, and record it from the inside? Because we're Americans. I don't have a better explanation than
why
that.
climb a mountain? Because it's there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I don't want to go off too much because I want you to have your time, but there is a deep love of learning and adventure that go hand in hand, and that's what makes heroes and adventurers.
Yeah. And the first, 2/3 of this movie, that sense of Americana that is embedded in this is actually treated appropriately. It's not satirized. It's not mocked. It's not glorified to the sense. There's an earnestness to it that is appropriate. And hey, yeah, that's a rarity these days. So bless them, you got that right. Thumbs up. But it's like everything they wanted to do, every stupid impulse they had in the creation of this movie, they just jammed into the third act.
Yeah, it was like the adults left the room. They're like, okay. It was like there was a mixture of kids and adults that wrote this movie, and the adults went home and the kids stayed to party. And they were like, what if we change the third act to make it asexual and dumb? Okay.
Or that's the point at which all the focus group notes came in, or like the part of your brain that's just like, screw the patriarchy has to manifest itself somehow. And it just vomits itself out in this way.
Kathleen Kennedy came bursting to the room and said, put a chick in it, make it gay. Is there any way we can make the tornado girl and gay?
So the third act it's a mess. Wow. It's just a mess. I wish it wasn't, but it is, and I have to be honest about it. Here's my other major gripe with the writing, and this goes along with some of what you said, but if you want to know how insecure the writers are about their characterization, look at how many times someone else in the scene tells you what you're supposed to think about a different character. Because boy howdy, is there a lot of other characters telling the main girl she's special. There's a lot of everyone trying to put her over.
Yeah, they learn nothing from the modern Star Wars trilogy.
Nothing.
Stop telling Daisy Ridley she's the one.
There's a lot of, at one point when like the British journalist who's with them goes, well, she's just so intriguing. Like, the hell you say? Like, I'm not saying she's a bad character. She's not, but she's not this mysterious femme fatale who wanders in through the smoky streets and just disappears off into the night, and you are just compelled by some deep yearning within you to follow her. She's not that.
Yeah, she's not the woman in red.
Or there's a bit near the end when poor Glen Powell, framed majestically sitting on his truck against the backdrop of the American horizon, looks at this British guy and goes, she's your story, not me. And you feel his balls being handed over to like Stephanie McMahon. To resurrect an old chestnut from the late Larry Zonka. And it's a hallmark of bad writing when you have other characters in a scene basically telling the audience, here's what we think you should think about this other character. Please think that. That's bad writing. That's all that is bad writing. And in fact, I don't think that she's a bad character. It's kind of the real kick in the teeth about this. Like, Rey is not a character. Not really. This girl actually is. Like, she's not a bad character. We don't need this. You're just not servicing what you're supposed to be doing here. Shame on you.
Yeah,
instead of not helping anything.
Instead of trusting the audience, and this is a huge problem with a lot of modern writing. The assumption your audience is plumb retarded and not able to infer things on their own is ruining television and movies. And I know that because I've made that complaint several times in at least the last 5 years.
More than once, you and me
Yeah.
both. So that, I got a big complaint there. And look, man, I don't need a deep romance plot for this movie. But there's enough chemistry between our two leads that we could have had a kiss at the end of this film.
It desperately needed it, especially when Glen Powell's balls.
When he damages federal property, commits a few felonies by running through an airport. Let me assure you, ladies and gentlemen, do not do that. That will go badly for you.
Yeah, he got kissed, but it wasn't by Daisy Edgar-Jones. It was by the guy that.
It was an entirely look. There was a cavity exploration, and he was not the one giving it.
Yeah,
but
that's what I mean. Like, what we're so afraid of just doing good old fashioned romance. I feel like Mike Stokasa's whole thing about like, why can't we have sex in Star Wars? Why is everyone asexual in these movies? Here we go again. And now we're not even doing dumb space fantasy. We're doing, disaster movie, and we still have people not acting like people.
I mean, everything about that finale is set up for there to be a kiss in that scene, and for some reason they just don't pull the trigger, and it's stupid.
I guarantee you it was there, and somebody said, take that out. We don't want to give the impression that a girl is obligated to kiss a guy after he's done nice things for her, because we wouldn't want that! Ugh.
Yeah, so... And it's especially wasteful because they actually have, because you brought up the comparison to Pacific Rim with the like half will they won't they?
Yeah.
It worked so well in Pacific Rim because the chemistry that those two characters had was not sexual.
Right.
And I actually give kudos to Guillermo del Toro and everyone involved for not forcing that.
Yeah, they were comrades in arms. They were not romantic. They did not have a romantic connection. It would be like, like they were in the trench together.
Yeah. And that's a very deep bond, but it's not necessarily sexual or romantic.
Right.
And not doing that was the right move there. It was the wrong move here. This one needed that at the end. And especially because that's the chemistry those two had. If you've done screen tests or whatnot and that's not clicking, then you either recast or you change the writing.
Glen character wanted to get in her pants the moment he saw her.
Pretty much.
And anyone who's paying attention or has been alive for the last 40 years got that. And then but again, it was just like, well, we don't want to give the impression that men and women should sleep together because, that's ruining things.
How dare we support, human love, connection, and the propagation of the species? We wouldn't want that.
No.
So there's a lot. I wanted to like this movie, man. I really did, because I like the original and I like disaster movies. And this one is not bad. The other problem I have with this movie, it's stretched. There's one too many sequences of the aftermath of the tornado strike. There's one too many musical montage sequences. There's one too many mopey scenes of her trying to pal around the farm. There's a bunch of stuff that's just one too many of. You could shave 10 to 15 minutes off of this, believe it or not.
Yeah, easily.
And that's another gripe I have. So ultimately, this is not the worst movie I've seen all year. It's not bad. You really don't want to think about it, because the moment you think about it and you try to examine this, not everything about it.
This is a gymnastics floor routine where at the very end of it, the girl falls off the mat.
Yeah. Where the rest of it, it's not like nines before that, but it's certainly passable. And then horrific injury, right? Goes to stick the landing and blows her knee out. Just something like that.
Jason, any last words before you head out?
No, I mean, I think we covered just about everything that I felt that during the movie. I think between the three of us, we covered everything. It was good joining you guys again.
Okay, you want to plug your fans, Lee, where we can see Jason's feet pictures?
Yeah, it's called...
You can't joke about that, Mark. It's a real thing.
I didn't say I was joking.
Shut up. How did you... I was wondering who my one subscriber was. Now I know it's Robert. Since he knows it's a real thing. Shit, I was trying to fly under the radar. No, I mean, it's been good. Get ready to head to Cleveland first thing in the morning. Get up at 4 a.m. Get on the road. That's going to be fun, and I'll finish listening to you guys on my drive.
All right, before you go, Jason will be back. When are you going to be back, Jason? Jason will be back for Borderlands, and then you'll be one of the 807 people for Beetlejuice 2, and then Venom: The Last Dance, and then Kraven the Hunter. So at least one Damn You Hollywood a month for the remainder of the year.
No, I'm on Transformers.
I have not added you to that, or your name would have come up when I did this. So
it's on here, September 23rd. It's on my calendar.
I'll be the judge of that. September 23rd, you say? Oh, yeah, you're right. You're there. Well, la-di-da.
If you've got a plethora for Beetlejuice, you can just
no. Anyone that wants to be on is staying on, because my rule now is I don't know who's showing up at the very last, but besides Robert and Jesse, I can't count on none of y'all motherfuckers. So anyone that signed up is staying on, and we'll see who shows up that day.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've got on my calendar is Beetlejuice, Transformers, and Venom.
All right. Jason, thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Have a good night. Hey, he's gone now. Before we go, Turpy Entertainment. Turpy is one of our big fans here. Likes to comment and watch on YouTube. We appreciate him. And he says, I have to agree, damn you, Hollywood, we have a certified stinker. Like I said, I was enjoying it. My kids were enjoying it. And then all the stuff I complained about in the ending just ruined the damn thing for me. And it's a shame, because I was, up to that point, I really was fine with it. Like,
if I'm gonna throw the last bits of my criticism out there, let's do a compare and contrast to the original.
Mm-hmm.
The villain in the original is just a slimy scientist.
Yeah,
that's it. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. The goal is nothing absurd. It's ambitious to try and gain data on a tornado the way they are, but that's all it is. It's ambitious and untested. Because it's 2024, we now have to have villains that are barely on screen, but you're supposed to hate them because they dress a certain way. And our goal is
the land developer had to look like Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And our protagonist has to exert the will of man over the forces of nature and kill a tornado. I'm sorry, guys. You lost the plot.
Yeah.
You really did.
All right, let's go. Let's get into the money here. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go with the money.
We're in the money. We're in the money.
All righty. On a budget of 155 million, this thing has made 124 million. Everyone at Universal and Warner Brothers is rather happy with themselves.
Ultimately, I imagine this one's going to peter out fairly quickly, but it's going to be profitable when it's all said and done, is my hunch.
Well, it's about to go up against Deadpool, so no one's going to see it this weekend. But
no, look, as long as this doesn't hit like a 60+% drop, though, we're probably okay.
I think it's going to make money. I think it'll be successful. It had a strong opening. It's just, it's got not necessarily a murderer's row, because when you see what's coming out in August, but it's, August isn't the dead Peach Dragon summer, end of the summer discussion we used to have. August is fairly loaded in terms of just high caliber content. As of July 21st, 2024, Twisters has grossed 81.3 million in the US and Canada, and 42.7 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of 124 million. In the US and Canada, Twisters was initially projected to gross 40 to 55 million from 4,151 theaters in its opening weekend, after making 32.2 million on its first day, including an estimated 10.7 million from Wednesday and Thursday previews. Weekend projections were raised to 175 million, which is very good. It went on to debut 81.2 million, the best ever opening weekend for any natural disaster movie. So there you go. You can't knock the hustle.
I mean, I can. I'm not going to in this instance, but I absolutely can.
You can knock everything. Normal people.
I try. I really try.
It comes with ease with you. All right. Twisters was the number one movie of the weekend. It knocked Despicable Me from 1 to 2. Despicable Me was in its third week.
Hey. You know what? Despicable Me, really good hold from its opening down to its second week held very well, and this week held very well. So
Right.
that one's still doing good.
Yep. Inside Out 2 dropped, maintained its spot at number 3. It's 6 weeks out, and it's like the most successful Pixar movie ever. Which I can't. I'm not. This is in no way a complaint. I'm not doing an editorial. It's fine. It's just weird because like I can't believe it beat Toy Story 3. Like I thought that was the most successful Pixar movie ever. Or even Finding Dory. I'm like, really? Inside Out 2, huh? All right.
Hey, those movies had legitimate competition.
Yeah, fair.
Inside Out 2 had like 3 weeks before the next family-friendly movie came out.
Long Legs, and its second week dropped from 2 to 4. So real quick, Robert, you got to be on Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do. First, in 10 words or less, how did you enjoy yourself?
Fine.
You said that to me in the comments, and I let it go. I'm not letting you get away with fine on the show.
It's fine. It's a movie podcast. You go on, you get the format involved means that because they don't talk about like spoilers or specifics, your review should be like 250 to 400 words. And that can be an interesting challenge, but
so I'm going to minimize my screen for this. So I've been on Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do a few times. I started off just doing their end of the year show. And then slowly but surely, I would work my way on when they were doing something that we typically don't cover here on Damn You Hollywood. So, for example, I wanted to talk about American Fiction, which we got to once we got to the Oscar stuff. But at the time, I didn't know that. American Fiction looked amazing to me, and I wanted to talk about it with somebody. So I maneuvered my way onto the show, and then I ended up having to see Saltburn, and I still haven't forgiven Chris Owens for that. And then, I took my kids to go see Monkey Man, but we didn't cover it because I was doing WrestleMania that week. I took my kids to go see Boy Kills World, and we didn't cover it because I didn't think it was showing anywhere where you live. Number one. Number two, I think it also came out the same time as something else, and there was
a bigger movie.
Yeah,
same time. Yeah.
So I was able to go on the show and talk about that, and to your point, because they don't talk about spoilers and they don't dedicate anywhere near the amount of time in talking about the craft elements that we do. I really have to come with like one good piece of information, one good thing to talk about with each movie that we're going to discuss. So like with Monkey Man, I mostly kept my comments related to the John Wick genre. Like John Wick's now its own genre. And what they were able to do with it with this movie. And then I talked a little bit about the trans, I think it was like not nuns, but the trans religious figures that he shelters with for a while. And that was interesting. And that actually made the news. Boy Kills World. I was talking about that it was a pastiche, and I talked about the marketing for it and everything. And so I really had to keep my comments pointed. Challengers, and I Saw the TV Glow. I wanted to go on because I knew I was going to take my daughter to go see I Saw the TV Glow, and I wanted to talk about sort of the asexual nature of film these days, and the greater impact on young people because it's directly affecting my daughter. And that's not even half of what I had to say once I finally saw Challengers, and I was like, "What the fuck with the movie that was promising you a threesome and you never get the threesome? Is what happened here?" So I went in kind of arm loaded for bear for that one too. I came back again for Axel F. And Kinds of Kindness because I had loved Poor Things and I wanted to see.
You really shouldn't. Here's the thing about Yorgos.
Yeah,
he's one of those directors that like 1 out of every 4 of his movies, when it's all said and done, is interesting and worth talking about.
Yeah, I said that on the show. I was like,
you're playing Russian roulette with the rest of them, and it's usually not gonna go your way.
It's a recipe for a bolt in the brain. It was funny because I said on the show, it was like Yorgos got way too much positive attention for Poor Things. He was like, I don't want this. Let me make the most inaccessible movie I can think of in a very short period of time, considering Poor Things just came out last year. Yeah, Kinds of Kindness was not a fun watch. But I did that, but I also had a chance to talk about Axel F, which initially I had on our schedule, and then I was like, we ran out of time and space, and I didn't think you'd care. So I was like, I'm not going to put us through that. And then finally, I was on because I wanted to talk about Maxine, and again, we weren't going to get to it. And then they forced me to watch A Family Affair, which, the exercise in that was we don't talk about rom-coms on here ever. Like, I would have loved to talk about No Hard Feelings, but you would have hated it, and there was no time for it in the schedule at that last year. So, all of that to say, I enjoy going on their show because it makes me have to do what we're doing in like 50 words or less. And it's hard, but I like the challenge of it. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that's about the size of it. When I was there, we talked If, which, okay, was okay.
You guys got out of that review in a hurry. It was like
there's just not a lot to say about it.
Yeah, I listened to the review and I was really anxious to see what you would think of it. Chris could not have stopped talking about that movie fast enough. Like it hurt him.
It's fine for what it is, but it's not, I can see why it did what it did financially and impact wise. And then we talked Long Legs, which was a slightly more detailed discussion.
Yeah.
And I will probably wind up talking again about on our year-end review, just as a heads up. Because, man, we have not had some very good horror movies this year. That's one of the few good ones that I've seen, and I do like horror, so.
I'm probably before the end of the year, just because it's going to get brought up. I'm probably going to make myself sit through Late Night with the Devil and Long Legs, but closer to when we're going to have to address them. Because that was one of the things about being on their year-end show last year was they're talking about a bunch of movies. I'm like, I have no way to participate in this discussion. I didn't see any of these. So I have to stop. Like, oh, if we're not podcasting about it, I can't see it. Just, like we never got the Drive Away Dolls, but I made myself sit through that because I was interested in it, and I wanted to be in a position to be able to talk about it at the end of the year. But it's nice to have a second, so much of what I've done as a podcaster is like, create formats, create opportunities, dedicate a lot of time to this so that we can talk about all the things. It's exhausting. And frankly, I know. Oh, everyone likes to talk about things with Mark. Sometimes Mark needs a break, but I still want to talk about this stuff. So it's nice to have a secondary outlet with our partnership with Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do to go somewhere else and talk about things in a different format. So I like it. I hope you'll go back. I hope you had a good enough time that if you find yourself in a long leg situation, you'll go back. I don't want to take up too much of their time, but I like being on their show. It's fun. And it gives me extra content for TikTok because they send me the video and I cut the actual just the movie parts out because boy, is there a lot in that show that has nothing to do with the movies.
Look, man, if you want to get some feed on TikTok for that last one, let me tell you what you do. You have to do some video editing on this maybe, but TikTok I think makes that a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about Joe Hendry, you have to put Joe Hendry up there.
Okay.
And when I mention that he's a Labrador that wished to be a real boy and got his wish, you need to make that transformation happen on screen.
I'll see what I can do. All right. So back to the numbers. We started talking about that because Quiet Place Day 1 fell from 4 to 5 in its fourth week. Fly Me to the Moon is bombing hard.
Fly Me to the Moon.
That fell from 5 to 6. Bad Boys, Ride or Die, still in theater 7 weeks out. Fell
Still
from 6
terrible.
to 7. Bad News debuted at 8. Maxine fell from 8 to 9. The Bike Riders jumped up 5 spots from 15 to 10. Horizon, 10 words or less. Just 7 to 11, and all the things related to it have gotten canceled. Alrighty. You're laughing like a Batman villain.
I know. You said I got 10 words or less. I wanted 10 haws. Okie
dokie, Joker. Oddity debuted at number 12. Disciples in the Moon Knight, number 14. Widow Clickquote, 18. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is now on PVOD. The Garfield movie is also PVOD. Kill it's in its third week. That's another of these Indian John Wick movies. Crumb Cracker debuted at number 28. Crossing 31. Great Absence 33. Scream Therapy 38. Valley Heart 39. And 50 Kilometers debuted at number 49, and that was the weekend that was. Worldwide, after 2 weeks, we get to come back to this and see where things are. And Inside Out is still the number one movie in the world. It broke $1 billion. It's at $1,445,000,000. Dune Part 2 still at 711, and Despicable Me in its like second or third week or whatever it was is at 577 million, and this is the number 3 movie in the world.
Non-trivial chance Despicable Me overtakes Dune Part 2.
Yeah, for sure.
Less likely it catches Inside Out 2.
Yeah. Godzilla vs. Kong: The New Empire, which they've just greenlit for a sequel, to which I ask
Why? Why are we doing this?
Just stop already. We look, this honestly, much like Marvel, it should have ended with Endgame. We got to Godzilla versus Kong. It ended fine. We don't need to do this anymore. The fact they did it again, they're like, well, what if there's no COVID this time? What happens then? What if we don't do things, that are day and date? Let's see what happens then. And so they did, and it didn't matter.
It's still nobody. It's still not.
Godzilla and King Kong fucking, get partnering up like Batman and Robin and literally doing the 60s Batman and Robin run. It was fine. It was fun when I saw it. I said good things about it back then. I still don't need to see any more of these stupid MonsterVerse movies.
I don't know how they screwed the MonsterVerse so thoroughly that we are where we are now, but we are where we are now.
Yeah, I'm so done with this. Kung Fu Panda from the fucking spring is at 545 million at number 5. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes with a tidy 396 million. Bad Boys Ride or Die is at 388 million. A Quiet
My
Place.
preference is Die, for the record, for that franchise. Just Die.
We get it, Robert. Everybody gets it. Bad Boys Ride or Die is at 388 million. A Quiet Place Day One is at 241. Garfield at 220, and Ghostbusters knocked down to number 10. All right, rounding out the top 20 are If, Bob Marley, The Fall Guy, Furiosa, The Beekeeper from January. Twisters debuting in the top 20 at number 16 with 124 million.
Okay, so we figure that peters out around like 370, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely knocks Ghostbusters out of the top 10.
One would hope.
And it won't matter anyway because Deadpool will also knock it out.
Ghostbusters is not holding that spot. The question is what gets rid of it.
Yeah. Civil War is at number 17. Mean Girls at 18. And at number 19, in the last movie to have crossed 100 million this year so far, Madam Web. Here are the movies currently doing worse than Madam Web that we've covered. Argyle, Challengers, Nights. Well, we didn't do Night Swim. God, Back to Black, Long Legs at number 31 with 47 million.
Long Legs doesn't care about a giant box office take. They shot that for $150.
Yeah,
it's already profitable, and it exists to generate some buzz. And to be abundantly clear on the following, there should be production awards considerations for that movie, acting award considerations for both Nicolas Cage and Micah Johnson.
You know who didn't like it? Whitney Seibold of Critically Acclaimed. I heard
Why does that not surprise me?
And he did not have nice things to say about that movie. I haven't heard him be angry about a movie in a while, and somehow Long Legs annoyed him.
That movie it's going to be divisive.
Mm-hmm.
You're either going to really like it or you're really going to not. There's no middle ground on that. You're not going to walk away ambivalent.
Okay. So we got Deadpool coming up this week. That'll be the number 1 movie in the world.
I don't know, man. I got a good feeling about. I'm just.
Please stop. I fucking hate you. Nothing of note to my knowledge comes out August. Well, I take that back. August 2nd is Trap. That got moved back a week, or up a week rather.
Did you see that Kevin Feige has come around to the old school realization that maybe we only released one trailer for a movie?
Yeah.
This block of wood parading around in a meat suit.
So anyway, we're not going to get to Trap because it initially was coming at the same time as Borderlands, so I took it off the schedule because I wanted to do Borderlands instead. And then they moved it, and then by that point, I'd already set my schedule, and I wasn't fixing it. So, no, we will not be reviewing Trap, but I will be on Movies That Don't Suck and Some That Do, August 8th to do Trap, and I think I convinced Chris to do Back to Black. We'll see what happens. See what they end up picking. But then we're back. We've got Borderlands. We're reviewing on
Boy,
August
that movie is
12th.
gonna suck.
You always
Gotta
say
be
that,
honest.
and it ends up being fine. Then we have Alien Romulus, which I need to show my kids the first Alien movie before we go see that as a comparison, because it looks like a soft reboot. The way they shooting this thing. Not I've seen trailers for it. And now, if you want to say a movie that's going to suck diddly yuck, that is just going to ruin Christmas for everybody, this modern Crow remake. Ugh.
I heard it described thusly, and I think it's accurate. That doesn't look like a Crow movie. It looks like it looks like what a 13-year-old thought The Crow was like.
Yeah. So I've been thinking
this is The Crow circa 13-year-olds on Tumblr is all this is. It is going to be utterly devoid of the edge and the heart that made. I don't even like The Crow all that much, but I can acknowledge what made it resonate.
Yeah.
And you're going to strip that down in favor of more aesthetics.
Yeah.
And again, just a 13-year-old's understanding of that movie.
There were two soundtracks in the late 90s, early 2000s that every cool kid had. One was Judgment Night. The other one was The Crow. And the soundtrack to The Crow was one of the big legs on the stool that held that thing up. And this movie isn't even going to come close to matching that soundtrack. And that makes me sad. It also looks like the Wish version of the fucking Crow or Temu. And lastly,
again, sad 13-year-olds on Tumblr talking about The Crow. That's what we're going to get.
So before we move into the critical review, let me say this. I've been kind of, in the back of my mind, bummed about how the year has gone with our podcast and movies. Not that I'm upset about what we've done. More of, by this time 2 years ago, we had done so many triple features with new movies. I had a good handle on, or we had done extra Damn You Hollywoods. For example, Peter Pan and Wendy. We threw an extra Damn You Hollywood on that week to deal with Peter Pan and Wendy, and it made my worst movies of the year. It made my top 5. Other movies that made my top 5 were also things that was like the Children of the Corn remake that Jason and I watched. There was a couple. The Little Mermaid. I mean, that was one that was that was a major theatrical release. We did a regular Damn You Hollywood on it. Wasn't anything special. But like, I'm thinking about, we're halfway through the year, and I'm thinking about my top 10 and my bottom 5, and I'm having a hard time picking either. Like, nothing has been extraordinary, and nothing is quite The Little Mermaid or Peter Pan and Wendy. And I'm like, did I just not watch the right movies?
Remember, we're also dealing with a year that's been gutted. Like,
well, that's what you said. You said, like, at the top of the show, your opening little like mini monologue there was, this year feels like almost like hollowed out, feels shallow, like there's something off. And I didn't say it at the time, but I was thinking, and I was like, well, we applauded the fact that Marvel, it's taken such a beating. It took the year off, but not having those major Marvel movies to sort of dot the calendar, not having the major DC movies to dot the calendar, a lot of like what's missing this year were big time event films. I mean, The Fall Guy was what passed for an event film this year. Furiosa was passing for an event film, and I don't need to go back into those 2-hour podcasts, but we said they aren't, though.
Yeah. So some of it is, I think, this is both of us.
Mm-hmm.
To really flesh out those lists we're going to concoct at the end of the year, we are going to have to like dig through the catalog a little bit and find out what's streaming where. Yeah,
right now, like, my favorite movie of this year is fucking Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. Oh, I'm sorry, Maxine. That was my other one. But that's like 2 movies that I legitimately got excited for and gushed about. Like, Challengers wasn't a bad movie. It's just,
it's pretty bad.
It didn't do what it said what the Marquis said it was going to do, was my major issue with it. Like I said, everything has just been, not to quote you or anything, but everything's just been kind of mid. Just kind of, it's fine. I don't think you and I have not had, like, even tonight, like we were mostly positive on Twisters, and then we got to the third act and said, here's where it all falls apart. We haven't had a good old fashioned Mark and Robert hate around in a long time. I mean, and like, go back I know we have some like new people listening tonight. People have been in and out of the show. You want to hear a modern Mark and Robert hate-a-thon? Last year's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where I went, I had a fucking meltdown, and started screaming at my friends because they were annoying me.
Dear Disney, not every hero grows up to be divorced, sad, and an alcoholic. Please do better for our heroes.
And waiting to die, begging to die.
Literally wanting to die by the end of that movie, as was the audience.
And yeah, last year was also Peter Pan and Wendy, and last year was also The Little Mermaid. There were 3 movies right there where even Alexa, one of my great accomplishments as a podcaster was when we finally broke Alexis. Alexis, who's speaking of Labradors, just everything is great and everything is wonderful. And I'm so happy to be here for a few years with us. This sucks. Chugged whiskey. But even she thought Peter Pan and Wendy was awful, and she likes everything.
There's nothing defensible about it.
You know, even she didn't like the Little Mermaid from what I remember. She liked some of the songs, but you know, but then me and you beat the shit out of her, and she didn't like him anymore.
There's a handful of positive elements to The Little Mermaid, but they're very few and far between, and the overall product sucks.
Yeah. So anyway, all of this to say, like, this movie is lackluster in both the positive and the negative. Like, I would love to find, 5 movies that me and you, or me and Jason, or me and Ronnie, Ronnie doesn't hate anything. Me and you, or me and Jason absolutely fucking hated, and I can't think of any.
Well, tell you what, Mark, if it'll make you feel better, I can promise to hate Deadpool and Wolverine next week, and you can all jump on me about not liking Deadpool again. This is if there's one, not just long running gag, but intermittent long running gag that we have on this show.
Oh yeah.
I don't like Deadpool. This is not a bit. This is not a gimmick. I don't like Deadpool as a character. I just don't. So when we watched the first Deadpool movie and Mark was mean, I mean, look, I'm eternally grateful to that podcast, because that's the one that afterwards, like, you contacted me like 4 days later and said, "Hey, was I too mean to you?" Because like my friends who listened to the show said, "What the hell were you doing to that poor guy?"
Right.
And
yeah, that was the podcast equivalent of the scene in Reservoir Dogs where I'm pouring gasoline on you and cutting your ear off to the sounds of Stuck in the Middle with You.
But that's the podcast where I kind of, after reflection upon it, and I was not mad at you or anything else. I just kind of went, you can't just, like, if you're going to disagree, that's fine. Don't be a jerk. And I'm saying this to myself because I can be. But you can be more assertive in your position. You can stand on what you're saying, and it's okay to swing back a little bit.
Yeah. It was after that. It was several months after that, as a matter of fact. But it was after that podcast where I said something to you. You said something, and I was like, "Oh, pshaw!" And you're just like, "Hey, I'm on this podcast, and I'll say what I feel." And I'm like, "You're not wrong." But yeah, that was definitely the old Family Guy joke of, I'm Sean Hannity and you're droopy dog. Well, you're right, Sean. Like,
so there's that one, and then there's Deadpool 2, which I still don't care for. And once again, I've got Mark and everyone else looking at me sideways going, "What do you mean? This is the best thing since sliced bread." And I'm standing alone on this hill going, no. I'm more than willing to give the movie props, both of them. I gave them their due where I thought they did things well. But I don't like those movies. And now we're getting to the third one. And Mark, here's the, you know what? Because this is the year, you're going to hate that movie. And I'm going to be the one up here going, no, this is great.
So my thought here, as we've been talking, is, oh, that's right, Madam Web. But I remember that review, and we laughed.
We almost felt like that's a movie that you kick, but you feel bad when you kick it, so you don't really kick it a lot.
That's the thing. It's like, it's bad, and we acknowledge that it's bad, but I still had some positive things to say about it. And again, it wasn't like I'm trying to figure out, is there any
It's not-
movie
hang
that
on.
made me as mad as Peter Pan and Wendy did? And no, like not Madam
Here's-
Web didn't even come close.
Let me explain. I can very quickly tell you why Madam Web didn't leave you like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just bad, it's forgettable.
Yeah.
It's bad and it's boring and nobody cares. And for a movie to elicit a reaction, there has to be something in there that warrants you doing more than just
I was legitimately
discarding it afterwards.
like I was legitimately angry after Indiana Jones. And I think
As
that's
we
why
all
it
should be.
I think
Terrible
that's why
movie.
it made my top 5. I was legitimately angry with Peter Pan and Wendy. And I was legitimately angry after The Little Mermaid, but that was more because Melissa wouldn't get the fuck off her phone that night than anything else. But the movie wasn't good either. All right. Anyway, that being said, that's just sort of our mid-year fucking
We are
review.
halfway through. We have hit the midpoint.
Yep. Here it is. The critical review, and I'm doing things backwards. Hang on. The critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Do you think people who watch our show who have never watched it before wonder, why do we have Triple H asking, are you ready? And why is Steve Carell yelling no? I don't understand.
If you do want the actual story behind that, so this started as Mark inflicting upon me the terrible reviews of people on Rotten Tomatoes. So our setup for it was Mark would ask, hey, are you ready? And then I'd go, no, not this again. And eventually Jesse said, hey, we're putting up all these sound clips. What do you want for one of those? And because Mark had chosen Shane McMahon's Here Comes the Money as our original intro for the money segment. We can't do that anymore because copyright. But what do you want for the critical one? And I went, well, we need the Steve Carell bit from The Office where he goes, no, because this is me staring into the abyss. This is me doing the scream. But Mark would always set it up with, are you ready? So do a DX thing. And that's how that matchup was born.
Yep. All right. So speaking of which, I actually have it set right. I did the stuff before we started tonight.
All right.
We have a 78% fresh on the tomato meter and a 92% audience score. Yep. Those saw it.
That's
Didn't give a shit about the ending, apparently.
That's about right.
The AI writes, summoning a storm of spectacle.
Poor AI.
Oh my God. And carried along by the gale force. By the gale force.
Okay, hang on. If the AI is throwing this many weather puns, you know they're just all over the reviews.
Summoning a storm of spectacle and carried along by the gale force winds of Glen Powell's charisma. Twister's forecast is splendid with a high chance of thrills. You ever just wish a stampede of bulls would just come into your house?
Very infrequently.
All right. So it's 78% for the all critics. When it goes to top critics, it only drops 1 point, so that's not significant at all.
Well, I mean, look, for as much as you and I complained about it, I think ultimately if I were to go like pass fail on this, it's a loose pass. Like it's barely a pass, but it would be a pass for me, I think.
So I had it wrong. All audiences was at 89, but verified audiences at 92. So there you go. All right, so let's get into the critics reviews here. Let's find our friends. I also love the fact that since I've been on Movies That Don't Suck, they totally co-opted this bit, and and Chris actually knows some of the people we pick on. And calls them out
He
by
found
name.
people I knew when we did it. There was at least one of them that I went, oh, I know you.
Matthew Rosa, Salon.com, top critic. Global warming has certainly changed in the 2 decades since that conversation, but apparently Hollywood's squeamishness about fully acknowledging that reality has not. Sir, you were asked to review a movie if you would like to complain about modern science, there's a great book called The Republican War on Science. Just write a review of that. Jesus Christ.
More importantly, that book is a little bit dubious in no small part because it turns out the science is being funded by people, so so a giant chunk of the results are skewed. And how did we turn science into a culture war, Mark? How did we do this?
Very easily.
But that's where we are because since you brought up global warming, just as a minor note, like, yes, the climate's changing. Yes, there's a degree to which humanity impacts it. How much do we impact it? That's actually unclear. What steps can we take to do it? Well, okay, but we have suggestions. Okay, but what impact will they actually have? Well, that's unclear. Well, then you don't actually have anything, do you? And never mind that most people who actually look at this say we're in a bit of a CO2 drought and plants kind of need that. So
Michael Compton of Bowling Green Daily News. Twisters ultimately is a one-man show, with Powell keeping it somewhat interesting until it finally goes spinning out of control.
Not wholly wrong.
I'm also not convinced he saw the movie. Rob Gonsalves of Rob's Movie Vault. Sort of a bummer. All right.
Very helpful review.
Hey, Robert, it's Ed Whitfield of the Ooh Tray. The Ooh Tray, Robert Winfree. Thank you, Mr. Ed. It perfectly replicates the first film, but this also has its problems.
Okay, get bent.
Wow.
I'm going to try really hard not to resort to ad hominems in this particular instance, but pretending that this in any way replicates the original is pathetic.
In the just the most minimal way possible. Yes, there are several sequences of them chasing tornadoes, just like in the first one. We got it, dumbass. Michael Ward of Should I See It? Just sit back and watch the destruction. This guy, this fucking guy.
Well, we have found the goldfish for the evening.
Yeah. Sorry to respond to this text.
You're good.
Yes, Sunday.
Again, like, that's an unhelpful review. It's an unhelpful pull for the review if all you're saying is just sit back and watch the destruction. That's a little bit like your review of The Notebook being just sit back and have a good cry. It's not helpful.
Linda Cook of our Quad Cities, WHBF-TV, Illinois. You'll get swept up in this disaster movie.
Will I? Will I really? My feet remain firmly on the ground.
All right. Emma Badame of That Shelf. The disaster epic desperately tries to replicate the magic of the original, but falls woefully short, largely due to a depressingly slight script from Mark L. Smith that gives its talented cast virtually nothing to work with.
Also true. Not an unfair review.
Let's see. Dustin Chase of Galveston Daily News. Powell's rising star power and cheesy charisma is more memorable than the tornadoes.
Not wrong. You know, that is actually another thing where this falls short. Like, its spectacle is heartless. It doesn't leave a lasting impression.
All right. Carla Renata of the Curvy Film Critic. Not a sequel to the original. This incarnation unequivocally proves that Glen Powell is not a sequel to the original. This incarnation unequivocally proves that Glen Powell is earning that star power. Those tornadoes kicking up will keep the audience engaged with action sequences and solid performances.
The number of thirst traps, the number of thirsty people that are coming out for Glen Powell recently is a bit disturbing. Don't get me wrong, he's not a bad-looking guy, but can we keep this somewhat professional? It's one of the reasons I keep telling Mark, stop talking about women's bodies.
Okay. Nick Johnston of Vanyaland. He's always good for a laugh.
Usually.
It's a shockingly humanist take on the disaster movie, and even if it indulges in violent delights, it's never
violent.
It's never too far away from reminding us that of the violent ends.
Really? How desperate were you to try and shoehorn a Shakespeare reference into your review of Twisters?
Uncle Malty.
That
Lennon
smacks of pretension.
Uncle Malty of LennonMalton.com. The reason to see Twisters is to feel the same emotions one enjoys on a roller coaster ride. Its visual effects are vivid and spectacular, and there is some catharsis in watching ordinary people behave in extraordinary ways when disaster strikes.
Yeah, no. The catharsis of the average person helping is not why you watch these movies. I'm sorry, no. The humanist elements of this is actually the weakest parts.
Let's see here. I'll read a couple more of these just because we know we wouldn't like all these people. We like to make fun of them, that is. Chris Knight of National Post. Sometimes lightning does strike twice. Derheap?
I'm amazed it took us this long to get to a legitimate weather pun.
Well, I might have skipped a bunch of them.
Oh, I'm sure you have, but still.
Christian Toto of HollywoodInToto.com. Glen Powell cements star status with swaggering anti-hero turn aimed at the Heartland.
Get...
What? How is he an anti-hero?
Words matter! Okay, dumbass.
Oh my
Words
God.
matter. Anti-hero. The fuck, man?
All right. This is a monumental episode. We get you first like that.
How do you arrive at the conclusion that that's an anti-hero? You sad sack. You pathetic self-employed loser. What? Anti-hero?
I'm going to make a t-shirt.
Somebody needs to bash you over the head with a dictionary, dipshit.
I'm going to have to make a t-shirt that says words matter to sell at my t-shirt store.
They do. They have meaning. An anti-hero is a specific category of character you write, and it's not what Glen Powell was playing here definitionally.
All right, last one.
This sad sack, empty-headed... I'm going to stop myself before I say something I really regret.
Speaking of something that we really regret, Kevin Carr, a fat guy at the movies.
Do we regret him, though?
Twisters is simultaneously just as good and just as bad as its 90s counterpart.
No, it's not.
It makes for a fun summer movie, but it's also a forgettable blip on the Doppler radar. Oh,
that's
God.
accurate. Okay, one, shame on you for the Doppler use.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, don't give him credit.
No. His point is correct. The Doppler use is utterly unnecessary, and the first half of your sentence is wrong. This is nowhere near as good as the original.
Yeah.
Please rewatch that. And if you're going to make that comparison, rewatch it. Don't go on memory. And view that one through the critical lens you're trying to apply to this one.
Well, folks, that wraps up our review of Twisters.
We know they're going to try to make a third one, and now they'll do a spin-off that'll be Hurricanes when she's trying to disrupt those with the same process.
And then we'll build all the way up to Twisters versus Hurricanes.
Probably. With a run-in from Sharknado, because why not?
Can we please get Cocaine Tornado?
No.
Speaking of cocaine tornadoes.
Look, man, the Cocaine Bear ruined the drug animal subgenre. Had one chance. It had one shining moment when it could have emerged from the precipices and recaptured the imagination of the general public. And they screwed it up because Cocaine Bear was not good. And we all wanted it to wanted it to be
monumentally missed opportunity. Anyway, so speaking of Cocaine Bears, last week in this spot, myself, Jesse, and Ronnie talked about Sons of Anarchy season 6, and we had about a 25-minute discussion on gun control, spurned by what happened in that season. And I'll tell you, when Ronnie is good, he's very, very good. When Ronnie's bad, he makes me want to quit podcasting. So, you know, in this particular instance, I triggered him just right, and we had a great discussion. I was very happy with it. The rest of the whole review is good too. We had a really good, almost 2-hour discussion on season 6, so worth checking out in the archive. What else did I do last week? Oh yeah, speaking of Ronnie, duh. So Ronnie, I get home and there's weather, and sometimes if the weather's bad enough, we'll have a power outage. But for the most part, everything will be fine. I got to contact Ronnie, and I'm like, "Are you going to make the podcast?" He was like, "Well, there's weather here." And the weather out where I live in North Carolina is a little shaky. And I'm like, oh God, Ronnie. So I have to start now lining up, what do you call it? And when you're the stand-in for somebody in a play, what's the word for it?
Understudy.
Thank you. I have to now set up understudies. So Robert, God bless him.
Usually me, for the record. Yeah. Usually me.
You and Jesse I contacted, and I'm like, please, somebody, I don't... Because about a week or two ago, we were supposed to do the High School's in Trouble Part 2. And there was weather, but this time it was in New York, and Pat couldn't podcast. And I was like, I give up with you people. So there's this habit of people canceling podcasts on me. And I'm like, I'm sick of it. And I'm like, I got to start lining up understudies. But Ronnie came through like a champ. Apparently the weather stopped just in time. We went a little bit later than whatever, but again, we had a really good discussion about the original Twister. It's On Trial Twister, 1996. Give it a listen. It's doing pretty good by our numbers. It's doing pretty good on YouTube. So check it out. We had fun talking about it. It's one of those rare movies where you actually get to hear me gush about something. This week, Thursday, Sean Comer's threatening to come back on the podcast, as is Dorian Price. And this one, Sean actually suggested. We're looking at Mike Flanagan movies, looking at Oculus, Hush, and Gerald's Game, and that's kind of the order of great to bad that they go in. Oi. Oculus. My son and I had fun watching that one.
Oculus is fine.
And then I watched Hush and Gerald's Game. By the end of Gerald's Game, I was ready to throw myself in the inlet.
You, my friend, are a godless heathen.
Oh, my God. You and I can talk after if you want to bash me over the head about that. I'm not doing it now.
I might. Look, and correct me if I'm trying to remember that I have these in the right order. Hush is the deaf woman in the house that's menaced.
Yes.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That's a perfectly fine.
It's fine. I didn't enjoy it as much as Oculus, but it's a finely well crafted movie. It was kind of giving me Purge vibes. It's a home invasion movie. But I think it's well done. Mike Flanagan, I'll talk about this on the podcast. Mike Flanagan is a master at Hitchcocking tension. Gerald's Game, on the other hand, oi.
Once again, I appreciate some of where you're coming from on that, but you missed the mark on that one.
Here's the thing. I didn't say it was a badly made movie. I said I didn't enjoy it. There were parts of it I had to fast forward through because I was getting bored to tears. And that's coming from the mental health guy. So just you're allowed to enjoy things. I'm allowed to enjoy things, and vice versa. I didn't enjoy Gerald's Game, but I have plenty to say about it because there's plenty to say about it. But that was an endurance test. So,
well, it is, but it's also like meant to be.
Sure.
It's not structured that way on accident.
Next week on Damn You Hollywood, we are doing Deadpool and Wolverine. That's Monday. And then I'm actually going to do a Tuesday podcast because I've got stuff going on the rest of the week, so I can't do it any other day. And it'll be myself and Jesse Starcher and Robert and, God help me, Alexis, and we'll be talking The Boys Season 4. I'm 2 episodes into it. I get why people are complaining now.
Okay, so I'm about where you are, but I know more than you do about it because I've talked with people about it, but I have not watched all of it yet.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to devote a large portion of our conversation about this season to time wasting and the Flanderization of characters.
Yeah.
Because boy, is that most of this show.
We had such a great, go back in our archive. Jesse, Robert, and I had such a great discussion about season 3 of The Boys. We've had very good discussions about season 1 and 2 as well. 3 really knocked it out of the park to the point that I didn't want Alexis on the podcast because I didn't want her to ruin the magic of me, you, and Jesse talking about The Boys. I'm 2 episodes into this and I might drop off that podcast. That's how annoyed I am at the show right now. Like, yeah. we'll talk about it. I'm not going to drop off, but
Look, man, if you want something else to kind of understand a little bit like what Mark and I are kind of hitting at here, there's a video the Critical Drinker put out after like the third or fourth, I think it was the third episode aired.
Mhm.
And it's just like The Boys, how to kill your audience.
yeah.
And give that a watch because he nails it.
Yeah. All right. So that's what we're doing next week. Again, I'm taking a break from movies that don't suck and some that do. I will be back on that show, like I said, August 8th to talk M. Night Shyamalan, Ding Dong's Trap. And I think Back to Black or whatever it is they decide to do as a second feature. Robert.
Yes, sir.
I hear you paint houses.
On the side. By which I mean only the side of your house. The front and back will be untouched.
Okay.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself there. I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com, WWE SmackDown on Friday, UFC events on Saturdays, and occasionally pinch hit on other days for other shows. So you might find me there popping up randomly, depending on, again, who else is available, who else drops out at the last minute, what I've got going on, all that good stuff. So yeah, SmackDown, we are hurtling towards SummerSlam, and SmackDown it's dragging.
So I have to go. I don't have cancer, but I have my
Okay.
my
Non sequitur there a little bit.
I'm going somewhere with this, but the last time I went to Moffitt to get testing and stuff done, they were like, "Hey, your platelets are low. Your immune system looks like it needs an infusion. Let's get you on this medication that this regimen that we've got going on. It's 4 infusions once a month for the next 4 months." I said, "Great, let's start at the beginning of August." So I'm getting it the day of SummerSlam. So I'm going from that. Now it's not like chemo, so I shouldn't be done with it and feel like I'm gonna die the way chemo did. But it'll be what it'll be. It's something, like I said, it's an infusion of medication to boost my immune system, get my platelets up. But I'm going straight from there to a party that Jen's throwing at her house. So while everyone is partying,
Yeah.
Well,
So to speak.
well, everyone is engaging in
Just move on.
I'm trying to figure out
You don't have the euphemisms.
as everyone is engaging in cardiovascular and impactful activity. I will be watching SummerSlam like a dork in the middle of this party. I insisted on this.
You should. Why do you do this to yourself?
Because I don't really want to be at this party, but I insisted that we have SummerSlam on while this party is going on around me.
Okay.
So, full
Mark,
report when it's over.
Can I tell you, as someone that cares about you, that this is a bad idea?
You tell me everything I do is a bad idea.
Not everything. A
Me and
lot
my-
of things.
Me and my son did a live stream of the Jake Paul fight.
That's not a bad idea.
I got a lot of followers from that.
I'm sure you did. I watched that fight. It was mediocre boxing, and Jake Paul once again being oversized and a much better boxer than the guy he was in the ring with.
Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because you mentioned SummerSlam, and I'm like, yep, I'll be watching SummerSlam, and I'll be the only one in a house full of people. Go on.
Full. House containing other people. I doubt very much you're going to get that full.
You don't know how many people are going to show up for this party.
I guarantee when you put out on the invitation that also featured WWE SummerSlam.
Oh no one knows I'm doing this. Like,
Well, okay, then you're gonna get jumped.
no, before anyone puts their hands on me, they have to have consent. That's the kind of party it is.
They're not. No, they're gonna look, man. Watching pro wrestling at those kinds of parties, they're gonna take his consent.
It was implied.
That's what you're asking for. So
let
you
me
got
tell
to
you-
put that on the invite.
Let me tell you how consent is implied is not funny in some of the circles I run in these days.
Oh, it's not funny at all, but you make the joke anyway.
I do constantly, and I get laughs from it in certain circles, and in others I get very, very mean looks.
You get mean looks from the people that those jokes are aimed at.
All right, move on.
You know I'm right.
That's why I laughed.
So anyway, again, we are moving towards SummerSlam, and
By the way, that same group of people loves it when I do the Mongo voice. I'll just throw that out there. Mongo wants SummerSlam. He did the Mongo. Dude, I was doing that on the last MDDS, and you could hear Jen in the background from across the house laughing maniacally. Like, could care less about the rest of the podcast, but every time I do Mongo, and she just dies every time.
Interesting people.
I really do. Plugs.
And that's not always a good thing. But again,
Mongo do plugs now.
never mind that shit. Here comes Mongo. Mongo only pawn in Game of Life.
Yes.
I love that movie.
Yeah. How have I not done a director focus on Mel Brooks?
I don't know. How haven't you?
No one suggested it, and I keep forgetting to.
Somehow you've gotten to Joel Schumacher before Mel Brooks.
Dude, I got to Jim Jarmusch before I got to Mel Brooks.
No. That makes sense, believe it or
my
not.
God.
Hang on, no. That makes sense because Jim Jarmusch is weird.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes weird movies, and you like talking about weird movies.
I got to Joel Schumacher because we went down the rabbit hole about Falling Down, and I didn't realize he had directed it. And then I had a brilliant idea.
So you found 8mm.
8mm is awesome, and I can't wait to talk to you about that.
We're going to have a discussion there, that's for sure.
All right, finish up. Come on.
What's the third one in that one? It's also Schumacher, but it's...
Look it up. Just keep going, and I'll just yell it at you.
Okay, yeah. It's actually like the least interesting of the three, but...
Oh, The Lost Boys. And I actually picked it because I thought you'd like that one.
Look, you didn't pick Batman and Robin, and which would just be the greatest point of contrast. We have Falling Down, a discussion of the disenfranchisement and disillusion of the American white middle class male.
Mm-hmm.
We have 8mm, a gross examination of what the elites get away with in the underbelly of society. And a toy commercial.
Yeah,
that's what that triple feature would be.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm not repeating things I've done in the past. We did the Joel Schumacher Batmans already.
Sort of.
Yeah.
On a long road to ruin that is choppy as hell, and
yeah, it's 100 years old at this point.
It is. So again, WWE SmackDown on Fridays. That's the go home show. No, not quite the go home show for SummerSlam. I think one more week. But we're hurtling towards that, and poor Cody Rhodes is now all alone fighting the new Samoans. Well, it's 2 Samoans and 2 Tongans, and Tongaloa still sucks out loud. So there's that. Mark, you've trained to be a professional wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Tongaloa botched a low blow.
Damn it. That'll learn me. Wasn't he a gorilla of destiny at one point?
Yes, always has been. Tongaloa and Tamatonga are the gorillas of destiny. Tamatonga is acceptable. Tongaloa sucks. And always has.
All right, keep going.
He botched his debut. The referee had to pretend he was pulled out of the ring by Tongaloa because Tongaloa screwed his timing up.
That's awesome.
Then he tries to hit Kevin Steen with a low blow, Kevin Owens. And the first time he tries, Moore gives him the world's worst prostate exam. And the second time, because Owens is holding up Tamatonga for the package pile driver, he actually punches Tamatonga in the head while he's delivering. He sucks.
I thought everything that came out of New Japan was amazing.
No one has ever said that.
Okay.
The Gorillas of Destiny have always been a blight.
Gotcha. All right, come on. We're over 2 hours in the last 20 minutes of just been plugs.
Yeah. Well, you wanted to talk about the orgy party, Mark, and it's all been downhill.
It's not
since
an orgy.
Uh-huh.
I specifically said it wasn't.
Okay. As a guy who just did a bit of a rant about words mattering, I accept your pedantic distinction. So, okay,
Thank
we're
you.
good. And this Saturday will be UFC 304 from Manchester, England. It's a perfectly fine pay-per-view card. If you want a full preview, check out the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. I reviewed the last week's card, which was disposable content, and preview this pay-per-view, which is probably going to be okay. So tune in for any and all of that. And yeah, next week, Deadpool and Wolverine, where Robert gets to be a killjoy again in all probability.
We'll have Zach and David on the show. It'll be fine.
How does that make it fine?
It's going to be like candy and salad. All right, folks. Speaking of candy and salad, that's the phrase that pays here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. For Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. This has been our review of Sisters. Be well, the beekeeper. Be well, be safe, and behave.